intro again.
Hey everybody, I'm Ben Yee.
I'm Melissa Stein, and today we're here to talk about local. We're here to talk about the Democratic clubs in Manhattan.
Is that what it is?
I am now on the executive committee of the Village Independent Democrats.
Which is a club.
Which is a club
Great.
downtown in Assembly District 66, Part A. And I'm learning that local clubs do a lot. And there are a lot of people out there who want to be involved in things. And this could be a way of getting more involved in the Democratic Party, in local politics with politicians, with what's going on in the neighborhood. So I wanted to ask you, as I'm so new to this, what do Democratic clubs do? Like somebody is saying, hey, I'm interested in this, I've heard of this.
Right.
Why would somebody want to get involved in this particular aspect of all the things you can get involved in?
That's a good question. So, in the Real Politics Workshop, I focus a lot on the political aspect of things. So of course clubs are there to run district leaders and run county committee members and participate in the larger Democratic Party process. But in reality, the Democratic clubs are the only outlet of the Democratic Party where you live. For all intents and purposes, if you are saying, where is the Democratic Party? What are they doing? That's your local Democratic club. The county organization isn't sending out organizers or canvassers, the state's not sending out organizers or canvassers, the DNC is not sending out organizers and canvassers to your neighborhood. The purpose of Democratic clubs is to be the Democratic Party where you live.
So, so it's like your neighborhood Democratic
Yes.
Party. So suppose somebody had an issue about rent in their apartment,
Right.
or noise problems, or an education thing. Could they, in theory, go to a Democratic club meeting and say, hey, I could use some help with this? Because besides calling 311, what would you do? So is that a possible outlet for somebody who's got an issue that they want to resolve somehow?
Absolutely. Again, the Democratic Party, or rather the Democratic clubs are the Democratic Party where you live. And so if you live in a Democratic area, as pretty much everybody in New York City does,
Right.
the Democratic Party has relationships with all of your Democratic elected officials. It probably has relationships with most of the people, if not all of the people, on the community board. And in fact, there's a lot of overlap often between people who are in the party clubs and on the community boards. And wherever you live, be it New York City or otherwise, people who are involved in your local party apparatus, be it Republican or Democratic, are often engaged in other civic organizations and other aspects of your local governance. And so if you take your issues to the Democratic clubs, they will absolutely be a forum in which to discuss these issues and find ways to solve them. So for example, Village Independent Democrats has a housing clinic, right? And so one of the things that the club does is it reaches out amongst its members and finds attorneys who are willing to donate pro bono time to give advice to tenants who are trying to resolve disputes with landlords. And you can just show up at the VID clinic, and actually a lot of clubs do this. It's not unique to VID, not all of them, of course, but many of them run clinics like this where the membership of clubs are oftentimes people who are involved in the law or legal professions, or they have special skills that relate to government, and they'll have them provide services to the community.
So a person could go to your local Democratic club both for support and help looking to resolve a problem,
Yes.
or to volunteer services,
Correct.
or participate. So it's really a great community
Yes.
of people both looking for help and people looking to help.
Yeah, so Democratic clubs are also community organizing entities. Folks who say, what does the Democratic Party do? Why is their messaging so bad? Why aren't they
Do people say that?
active? People say that all the time. They say, I've got a problem. I've got this idea. The Democrats need to change their messaging. They're never going to win anybody with this type of message.
Yeah.
Well, how do you get that message to the Democratic Party? You could try to email the DNC, but they're not going to listen to you. The Democratic Party is comprised of very local organizations in your community, and you can go there and express the fact that you don't think the party's doing a good job. Now, depending on how good of a job they're doing in your local area, that is how active your club will be. Again, the Democratic clubs are the Democratic Party where you live. The county organization is an amalgamation or a coalition of the district leaders associated with the clubs. They're not doing the on-the-ground work. They're not there to be the touch point
So it's
for the community.
So that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
How would one find their local club?
Well, if you live in Manhattan, you can go to manhattandems.org, and you can just look up the club for your Assembly District part. You can look up your Assembly District part if you don't happen to know it, although you will have to know your election district. but there's a tool for that which the government provides.
So this is all based on assembly districts. So Democratic clubs basically exist within an assembly district. So you're
Yes.
really representing that neighborhood
Yeah.
of people who are in your AD and vote with you.
Yes, the Democratic clubs are organized geographically in Manhattan by Assembly District Part, and also in Queens by Assembly District Part, and in like 2 assembly districts in the Bronx. Everywhere else, like the rest of the assembly districts in the Bronx, and in Brooklyn, and I think in Staten Island as well, clubs represent entire assembly districts. But they really are, they really are sort of the nucleus of democratic activism and even some decision making. So again, if there's an issue that you don't feel your elected officials are addressing, and you want to raise its profile in the political party with which they identify, go to your Democratic club and start making it an issue. Because the Democratic clubs are the ones who will hold events. They hold a lot of events and panels, or they have elected officials come and speak, and they ask questions to the elected officials or to experts about the issues that their members want. And if you're saying the Democrats should be talking more about jobs and less about Trump's taxes, for example, you test this message by doing it first in your local community. We think a lot about when you learn and take political science, you learn about the states being laboratories of democracy. Well, the clubs and your local democratic entities are the laboratories of democratic organizing.
So what I'm learning, or I've learned in the past year, is when I first saw your workshops a year ago, I thought being on county committee was going to be that.
Right.
I thought that was the entry level, and we were going to make change happen, and we were going to address local issues. And it turns out that no, actually, it's the Democratic clubs. That if you really want to, county committee, it's sort of.
It's like this double thing. There's like these parallel structures in some effect, but it is technically supposed to be the county committee. Because these are legacy structures from the old Tammany Hall.
Right, but I think that the power has been bled out. I mean, from my experience so far in county committee, if one of my neighbors came up to me and said, "Hey, county committee man Alyssa, I have issues with street noise.
Right.
I need you to talk to people to fix that." I wouldn't, in that structure, be able to engender any kind of change. I might say, "Hey, come to a Democratic club meeting and talk to people there who have contacts with elected officials, who are in touch with different groups who could maybe make change happen." And I think that, to me, from what I've seen, that's a more effective way at the moment for really making change happen at a local level.
All right, so.
Not conceptually, but reality based.
Right, and both conceptually and in reality, like both in concept and in reality, that's really how it's supposed to function. The Democratic Party, and this is all going back again to sort of the machine Tammany Hall model, which was hyper effective and became the model for all political parties everywhere in the United States, and honestly in lots of democracies around the world. The idea was you had block captains, which are now county committee members. They were overseen by ward bosses, which are now district leaders. The ward bosses would corral all their county committee members, and they would get them together in what is essentially the Democratic Club. So the club was the place where everybody came together, and people would hang around and do what the ward bosses wanted.
So it all sort of worked together back
with
then.
Right, and so you'd hang around because there weren't an infinite number of county committee seats, and in the bad old days, there weren't elections for county committee. So how did you get on the county committee? You came and you hung around with the ward boss at their club, and then if you did a good job or they liked you particularly, they would make you a county committee member. Once you're on the county committee, you're starting to work your way up the food chain. When that ward boss steps out, maybe you get to be the ward boss. Or when there's an opening for elected officials, from whom are the ward bosses picking the candidates? From the county committee members or people in their club.
So that's how it was, but that's not how it is.
Well, so
now
how,
it seems like
right.
it's two distinct entities.
It's how we think about it, right? So the clubs are still the place where the local activism happens, and it's where the elected officials go to meet the people who are active in their districts, who will get them elected and do the petitioning and do the work that makes their lives easy come election time. And that is where clubs derive their power. The county committee members are a special set of club members, and that they also have a vote on the Democratic Party, which creates a degree of accountability between what people in your district want and what the Democratic Party institutionally is able to do or does in practice. But the county committee members, remember, they're meant to be block captains. The actual responsibility of the county committee is not just to go to the assembly of the county committee and vote on rules. They're given that power in exchange for the responsibility of organizing their blocks, or now their election districts.
That's great. Two things. I don't believe that you have to belong to a Democratic club to be a county committee member.
You don't, but that changed. You don't have to, because now you can petition to get on the ballot. Petitions did not exist at the beginning of the United States of America, and you can win an election without being friends with a district leader, which again is something we changed
Right.
in the reform era in the 1870s and early 1900s.
So back to 2018.
Yeah.
The last thing that I want to leave us with is that, in theory, you should be able to go to your county committee person and say, hey, there's an issue on my block, but at the moment, there's no structure in place for a layperson to find out who their county committee person is. So conceptually, yes. In reality, no. But perhaps if the rules committee of the county committee makes that information available, then it really could be a more useful tool for day-to-day citizens to get some help for local issues.
Reorganizing and opening up the political parties in this country is one of the critical things we need to do to begin fixing our democracy.
And that is the soundbite of today. See you next time.
Laters.